Now all of a sudden it's like, well, I made this decision back then, and this is my, you know, chained, this is my shackle. And I don't want to have to ask somebody else to carry the shackle. And the reality is don't ask them to carry the shackle. Ask them for help escaping that shackle. Right? And do it from a place of like hope and love. All right. Welcome to another episode of Money Therapy. And we're back to a more normal conversation. You don't have to hear a monologue of Brandan this week.
A more normal format. We're back.
But I hope you did enjoy my 20-minute rant on beliefs and challenging them and creating greater capacity, focusing on, the mindset more than the tools and the knowledge that we are often caught up seeking.
Yeah, personally, so I listened to that and I thought it was very good. It made me think of a couple of things. I listened to a podcast like kind of right after that was about like goals. The question was whether goals are overrated or underrated. The guy said, I think goals at some extent are very overrated and people misjudge like the purpose of goals. People think the goal is the most important thing, but the goal is just to get you moving towards the positive direction to the most important thing. You hear people, we should make goals as small as possible to get momentum going in the right direction. That's kind of where he was headed with it was, goals are there to help motivate you to get going in the right direction. They're not the end all be all.
They're not the direction there to move you in the right direction. I love that. I've just been stuck in this like wheelhouse lately of I meet so many people that have these great skill sets and great tool sets, but the skill sets and tool sets are almost like on the outside of their purpose and their heart's desire. That's the limiting capacity. That's the lack of function. If we don't know who we are and we don't know what we're designed to do in our life, the skills and tools we can develop and develop. We're always going to feel like something's missing there. Once you know your purpose, then develop the skills and tools inside of that, and that's where you get that 10x kind of return on investment. So Bill, talk to me.
A young married couple, they had just gotten married, and she had brought some debt, like credit card debt, into the relationship. And we were discussing, we were having this goals discussion, where they wanted to go, what they wanted to accomplish. And it was clear that, we should take care of this credit card debt first. This is, a great opportunity. And she was expressing to me how much shame she had about the fact that she had done this in the past. We just had a really deep conversation about one person maybe have brought more debt or some debt of some kind into a relationship, and they feel that shame about that. Sure. And I just really, looked at her because, her husband was sitting there going, hey, like, I don't care. I love you. I want to help you with this. And she felt a responsibility to, clear it up herself. And I just drove home the point, like, listen, shame is a mud, and it'll keep you stuck if you let it. Don't miss this opportunity to work with your spouse and work on your future together. It's an amazing thing when you all figure that out together, your system, how you guys like to do it. That will propel you so far forward in the future. It's not even funny. So
yeah, it's so powerful, the thought of anytime we're trying to function inside of shame, the outcomes are going to be less than ideal. We're not at our best, and we're not functioning at our capacity or capability. Even we're not there if shame is the cloud over our heads.
From that conversation, I was thinking about shame, and I was trying to think of, have I ever made a good decision about my future from a mindset of being shameful about a mistake that I made? For me, it's hard to come up with an example. I think on a little, like, a less severe note, it's kind of like when you're making decisions for your future, I kind of like to think about it as, am I running to something or am I running away from something? And I feel like those feelings within itself are pretty similar. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Yeah, I see shame as this, like, kind of like the old school movies or cartoons where you'd have like this prisoner in the black and white stripe outfit. And then they would shackle that giant ball to their ankle to just really like slow them down. To me, sometimes that's what shame is. It's this like shackled, immovable object like just
Yeah.
keeping us there. And until we figure out how to unshackle ourselves from that, we're never gonna get where we want to be, and we're definitely not gonna get there as fast as we possibly can. We're shackled to something that is, I mean, like we all navigate life, right? Like we're all impacted. Countless psychologists have talked about like the environment and affecting and even having like genetical impacts potentially,
Oh yeah.
just the conditions we're living in. And so if we sit there and can't acknowledge the fact that sometimes life, sometimes circumstances produce less than desirable results, especially when we start to level up. And
Yeah.
marriage is one of those opportunities where generally we're leveling up. Now all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's like, well, I made this decision back then, and this is my, you know, chained, this is my shackle. And I
Yeah.
don't want to have to ask somebody else to carry the shackle. And the reality is don't ask them to carry the shackle. Ask them help escaping that shackle, and do it from a place of like hope and love. So many times we do sit there and think, well, if I just keep this to myself and figure it out by myself, it's kind of my penance, right? Like I made these decisions and now I have to get myself out of it. Arguably, and again, I've, most people that are listening to this regularly understand, like I generally think and form beliefs from a place of my faith, but I don't think we were designed to ever be ostracized. Like I think
Yeah.
we were designed to be in community, and build the strengths that you have are
Yeah.
not the strengths that I have. And if I keep everything to myself and don't ever rely or trust or give the opportunity for you to show grace and show up,
Yeah.
uh, we're just probably going to stay shackled. Even once the debt's gone, now the new shackle is, well, I've set us back years.
I want to go back to something that you said. You said your environment has a lot to do with how you move forward. The people that you have around you, you said we're not meant to be ostracized. We're meant to have community. And I wonder, we talk a lot on this podcast about the value that a financial advisor brings to your personal finances. That's kind of where my head went to, is like, if I can help this person move forward and set that brick down. Sometimes like therapists I know will have you like take a cinder block and write whatever you're shameful about. And they go, carry it around in your backyard for as long as you can until you can't carry it anymore, and then
Yeah.
drop it and feel that relief. It's like a physical, representation of that shame. And that's kind of the first thing, we try to visualize value as a monetary thing in our society, especially with what we do as financial advisors. But if I can succeed in helping this couple that we're talking about, work together, and for her to go, you know what, that's the past, this is the future, we're going to build this together. How valuable is that?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a financial advisor. Like you said, it could be a great friend, it could be a mentor, a pastor, a therapist. Surround yourself with people to help you break that shackle that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
I,
asking for help, I would say, is more empowering. It's much more empowering than it is you feeling like a burden or something. Like, you'll find that when you ask for help and someone's excited and motivated to help you, it feels empowering for everyone.
it does. And it gives that person purpose as well, right? Like
Yeah.
it gives them the opportunity to show up. And if we never ask for that, and it all that really is breaking your own pride and ego sometimes, and just
Yeah.
doing it the first time, often reluctant to ask for help. And it's wild because that's pride and ego.
Yeah.
However, what I realize is when I do just kind of get out of my own way and just ask somebody for a little help, how excited they are to have the opportunity to pour into someone else, and
Yeah.
how much they grow through that as well. When you're entering a marriage, like I think sometimes we like to compartmentalize,
Yeah.
um, certain, like, well, I'm bringing this to the table, I'm bringing this, but what
Yeah.
you're
Like,
not.
how are we both contributing to the
Right, but
relationship
what yeah,
almost?
what's failed is, like, once you make that decision to become a team,
Yeah.
um, everything gets shared, right?
Yes.
It's like the idea, the biblical idea of like two fleshes become one. It's no longer just his or her shackle. It's both now. You guys are one person. So by pointing all the tools and ammunition that we have to obliterate this thing. Again, there's a little bit of pride that we have to set aside.
Yeah.
But you know, in many examples that I can think of, it's like, well, I respect the fact that you want to get rid of this because you brought it in,
Yeah.
but the idea that that could take you years and years and years will undoubtedly slow down progress ultimately. Whereas if we just formulate a plan where, you know,
Yeah.
everything gets fixated on this one major obstacle and
Yeah.
we get rid of it,
Yeah.
then we can get back to the big picture, right?
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think it's even sillier than that. And silly is the only word that kind of comes to mind, because it's like, if I think about how happy I am to help my friends and my
mhm.
family. They call me up and say, "Bill, like, I need to install a dishwasher. I need to paint my house or something. Like, will you come help me, or will you help me move?" Like, I am a helper. I love to help. And then I think about how much I love helping my wife. And no offense to my friends, I love it way more, because I love my wife. And so I just can't, it doesn't make it's silly to me to think that I would allow someone I love that much to drag something for that long on their own, because I'm sitting on the sideline and they're just like, "No, you stay over there. I got this." It's like, I didn't I didn't marry you I didn't marry you knowing that, well, she's going to take care of that and then we can go on together.
Yeah.
Like, no, we're in this thing. It just doesn't make any that's why I say silly. It doesn't make any sense to me.
But how? So I got two things here, and
Yeah.
they're kind of unrelated, but under the same umbrella. So the first thing that we kind of talked about um, was the notion of young couples getting married. We fall in love, and we have to understand that not like we're not the same. Most of the time, we're opposites. Like most of the time, most couples have a lot of opposite attributes, qualities, and
Yes.
that tends to draw us together, right? It's this balance that we bring to because of inside of the relationship. Thinking about my fiance and just how incredibly polar opposites like we are in so many things, very very aligned on some things, but very opposite on some things. You know, if you show up in the relationship, again, I mentioned compartmentalizing things. There's this idea that like through our creation, right? Through us being here, there's something inside of each person, this drive, this passion, this purpose, this calling, whatever you want it to identify that thing as, that is so particularly unique and so powerful and so valuable.
Yeah.
The problem is the unique thing about our eyes, Bill,
Mhm.
is like right now, I see you, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't see me, especially like, well, I kind of can see me right now because I can look at my screen, but
Right.
normally without a camera or without a mirror or without something like that, I see everybody else. I don't see myself. And I think sometimes that very physical thing creates this like psychological kind of emotional like trigger in us to where we notice what everybody else brings, but we don't pay attention to what we're showing up with.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes back to, you know, and it's funny how often I tie back to understanding like who we are, having the values, having like knowing our identity.
Yeah.
Right. So in this one particular couple, I think my question would be like, who are you? What's your identity? What are you bringing to the table? Like, what are your values? What are the things? And I would ask the husband, like, what do you love about her? What does
Yeah.
she offer you that
Yeah.
is way more valuable than, you know, $20,000 of credit card debt or however much it was? I think in that sense, like too often we don't because we're not seeing ourselves and we don't take time to reflect on ourselves very often.
Mhm.
We show up like I show up in a room. I'm part of a couple different groups, and I always feel like I'm the least valuable person or the least deserving person to be in that room.
Yeah.
The truth is they all see me for what I'm showing up with and what I
Yeah.
have inside of me and the value I bring to the table. They want me there. They keep inviting me back.
Yeah.
but I'm giving more credit to the purpose and the value they're bringing to the table and not taking time to realize what I'm offering too.
Well, I think I have a hack in order to, for the person, I don't want to say a hack, but for the person, trying to figure out, be that, the self-reflective and self-aware is, something that we talk about all the time. And it's very much what you're talking about here too, is like, what do I bring to the table? Or what are my, to go back to what are my values? I think like a way that you can do this is, some people say, well, like, basically follow your own advice. Like, what would you say to a friend in your same position? So
Yeah.
take yourself out and look at this couple sitting in front of you. What would you say? And I guarantee you, she, who's feeling the shame about the money and the credit card debt in the past, would probably say, because she's such a nice person and you can tell she's a good person, she'd probably say, well, don't worry about that. Like, yes, obviously you made some mistakes in the past, but we got to move forward now, and we should, you should work together. And so when you kind of reflect that on other people, I think you are showing your own value. If somebody, is depressed or struggles with anxiety, and you had that friend sitting right in front of you, and you struggle with, depression, anxiety, right? You would tell that person, like, hey, there's a lot of people here that love you. How can I help you? Because you're valuable, right? And so one of your identities within that is you kind of see value within yourself. Does that make sense? It's like whatever you give advice to others, a lot of time, that's why I think people say, well, I don't follow my own advice.
Yeah.
Like, and that's maybe why it's so hard, because you do value others more than you value yourself. But maybe pay attention to in those situations when you would look at something objectively and say, well, I would never, be this hard on a friend
Right.
than I am how hard I am in my own head. So
Yeah.
I think that's a way to, if you don't know where to start on the self-reflection or the being self-aware, maybe look back on what kind of advice you've given friends and family in the past if they asked for it, or even, look at other people and look at that advice, and that might give you a hint as to what you value, and might help you out in the future.
Something that just comes, and we've talked about like the win journal, right? Like writing down
Yeah.
big life wins. And I think if you write and have a win journal, but if you don't, just jot down a couple memories that come to mind about some of your biggest accomplishments in life.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a solo, like for me accomplishment. It could be times I showed up and helped somebody turn their life around. It could be times that I've, given some advice and really set somebody on a new path, or I was there for somebody and pulled them through a really hard time. It
Yeah.
could be like, hey, I was in this really hard situation and I made it through. Like I did that.
Yeah.
So if you start thinking about these wins, like, and this could be silly, right? But like, there's a lot of like evidence in psychology that just going in front of the mirror and like getting that Superman pose and like talking to the mirror, looking at yourself, saying, Brandon, when you were in this situation, you accomplished this. Like you went from where you were to where you are, and you did this, this, and this, and these things were really hard, and you
Yeah.
navigated it. You showed up here and you helped this person.
Yeah.
So kind of start to identify some of these attributes of who we are when we don't know how to define who we are. If
I
I
like
ask
that.
you, Bill, who are you? And you
Yeah.
have to say, well, like you, like that shows me you're not super clear on who you are
Yeah.
and the values that you have, the attributes or the purpose of your life.
Yeah.
So if you're not quickly able to answer the question, who are you? What's
Yeah.
your purpose? What are your values? And what's your vision? I would highly encourage, if you're listening to that and you can't like within seconds respond and give me a super concise and clear answer, you're not thinking about it hard enough. You're focused on everybody else's little, seed inside of them and what they're bringing. You're not focused on yours. And so I would turn that around. But one question I have, because we're just kind of talking about like this young married couple and young married couples in general, and really starting to mesh finances, and that can bring about a lot of stress, shame, guilt, and it can be hard, and it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard to forgive people that bring in things. maybe they weren't super clear on it as soon as they should have been, or as soon as you wanted them to be, but they weren't ready. There's a whole lot of nuance to navigate there. But
Sure.
um, one thought that came to mind in all this, I'm just going to pose it as a question: is are prenups predestination?
Mm.
What are your thoughts?
I think so. And again, that's more of an instinctual, response to that. I've heard people in the past say things like, well, a prenup can be helpful in extreme circumstances. Like if somebody marries, somebody who has like extraordinary amounts of wealth, and they also say that, it's more for like the crazy in the family instead of the actual couple. Um, but yeah, I think, I don't know. I like the idea of not having a plan B. If you talk to a lot of successful people, maybe in business, they, people who've overcome, impossible odds, we've all heard those stories before. The most common thing they said was like, either I didn't know what else to do or I didn't have a plan B, which is, in my opinion, the same exact thing. Um, and so that's just how I look at it. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Um, I do like. I think people are oftentimes uneducated in what a pre or post nut can accomplish, and
Mm-hmm.
how it's not necessarily just like what's mine is mine, or what was originally mine is going to be mine.
Yeah,
Um, as like a blanket statement, like so
sure.
much in like legal documents, we can get very certain about what we are talking about. What like again, I think the same thing. Why do you wear a seatbelt? Why do you buy life insurance? Like, are those things important? Absolutely. Are we predisposing ourselves to having a terrible accident and dying if we put on a seatbelt and have life insurance? I don't think we're necessarily predisposing ourselves, right? But we're taking necessary precautions about something that could inevitably happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the the reason why I bring that up is because there actually is a huge statistic out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because a lot of times the prenups and things that we hear about are for the like ultra wealthy people, and we think, oh well, I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars, so I don't need a prenup, right?
Sure.
That's a fallacy because of what is sensationalized. Prenups are actually very, very common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think if you explore what they are and what they can do, the statistic is, especially if you remove like the ultra high net worth, Hollywood stars and kind of stuff like the those things that get glamorized and
Sure.
sensationalized. If you just look at more like the common people that are getting pre and post nups, there's actually a big statistic that says that because of the planning that goes into establishing a pre or post nup,
Mm-hmm.
most couples are more readily like uh, they have a higher capability of handling financial discussions together because of like the amount of preparation and work that goes into the planning that goes into establishing pre or post nup. So
Hmm.
I'm not advocating that everybody
Interesting.
needs one, right? Because again, I do think that there, you know, most people assume like if I'm doing this, it provides an easy out. But I
Yeah.
would say that it is something that given the right kind of like premarital counseling or marital counselor, and especially the right kind of lawyer that actually partners with counselors,
Hmm.
many times it's more about creating the conversations, and many times you'll get to a point where you realize, hey, we don't really need a pre or post nup. These
Mhm.
conversations have in fact kind of laid anxieties to bed and
Yeah.
made us stronger, better communicators about our finance. But on the
Yeah.
flip side, there are some times where it's like, hey, we're coming into this, and maybe it's not the credit card debt, but maybe it's a family heirloom, right? Maybe it's a house that you might potentially inherit one day. Maybe it's certain things that you do need to stay in the family. I think it's important to kind of at least at least say we should become educated on that more and stop thinking that this is just a an easy way for me to run one day and take everything that I started with.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point because, like, to be honest, I am not very, I'm not a lawyer, right? And I'm not very educated in pre and post nubs and things like that. But you highlighted basically both ends of the argument that I've heard. Um, and it really haven't, in my practice, haven't really run into it with clients before. But I couldn't agree more with, I would say that there's a couple things, that I would love to keep discussing with you. But the one thing that, I definitely agree with is putting the work in on the front end,
Yeah. And I
and
think that's important. And
whether,
I mean,
yeah,
maybe more important than a prenup is just those marriage counseling services that are out there that
yeah,
do focus on helping create financial discussions specifically. And
yeah,
again, I think, even with the right financial planner, I mean, it's something that we do. I tell my clients to come in all the time,
yeah,
and we can have conversations where I can help facilitate, because a lot of times, um, especially after I start working with somebody for an extended amount of time, I start understanding how they think.
yeah,
And so many times, how we think and how we speak aren't exactly like, we're saying what we're needing to say, but we're not articulating our thoughts and our beliefs and the things that we really like. It's like
yeah,
sometimes level one communication is just responding. Level
yeah,
two conversation is about like articulation.
yeah,
And I think that that's a lot of. So I tell clients all the time, like, come in and let's have a conversation here. So we can like, maybe there's something where it's like, I hear what you're saying, and I also know what he or she is needing to hear.
yeah,
And what you're saying sounds like this, and I think what you're saying, actually you mean this, and this, what you mean, is actually what she needs to hear. So I
yeah,
think sometimes, like, working through that, and that will help the couple say, well, like, man, I've been trying to say that for so long. And I'm like, well, you're saying it this way. You
yeah,
mean this. Here's the gap. Let's become
yeah.
better communicators through this process.
Yeah, I think it's the old adage, we think in pictures and we speak in words.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a disconnect there. I mean, I know that, with my wife, like a lot of times, like I'll slow down if I notice, we're talking about something, but I'm having trouble like expressing something. I'll say like, I have this vision or I have this picture in my head, you know, like, let's say I was supposed to take the trash out, but I thought she was going to do it. Right. I had this picture in my head that because you said this 3 days ago, you were going to take the trash out. Right. It's a terrible example, but everyone understands that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, just like sometimes that helps, just like calling that out. Like, this is what's in my head to the best of my ability to describe it. And it's amazing how hard communication can be, especially around, around finances, because, one could argue that what we do with our finances is, obviously going towards our future together, because finances will always be a part of the future. And so, how are we going to dictate our future by working together? Um, and so I just think, to kind of wrap up here, I guess I just think it's such an interesting conversation. I think we should like develop a premarital like course thing. I don't
Ooh,
know. I'll get on it and doodle a little bit and see what you think later.
I like that.
But I would encourage anybody, like, but at the same time, it's never too late, So the communication needs to be there, and to bring it back to kind of the beginning, shame is a mud, and you're going to be wasting a lot of time when the future is big and bright, and don't be afraid to work together and ask for help.
Yeah, and I would echo, inside of that shame space is, if you're constantly focusing on the weight that you're bringing in,
Yeah,
by nature you're going to slow down everything. If you understand that you're complimenting your spouse and they're complimenting you,
yeah,
and you guys are coming in as a team now, it's four hands, not two. Um,
yeah,
and the law of exponential effects starts to take place. So it's not four hands are doing what two people can, four hands are doing what 40 people can.
hmm,
Um, and that's where, like, if we can just get rid of, like, heal the shame, right? Because
yep,
also, if you're going to have children, what we don't heal, we pass on,
hmm,
right? And that shame is not only uh, establishing beliefs inside us that are train wrecks for our beliefs. They're disastrous, but they're also like shame can also reinforce unhealthy beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So we got to get the shame gone. We got to examine our beliefs. We got to look what we're bringing to the table, and we got to be able to ask for help and accept the help whenever it shows up. We got to be vulnerable, and then we have to understand that if we can do all of that, we're not bringing a weight to the relationship. We're actually bringing like a jet pack, right? Like if I show up with $20,000 of credit card debt, but I also have vulnerability, the willingness to help, the willingness to accept help, the willingness to work together, the thinking of exponential growth. If I'm bringing that to the table, we're not sitting here. I'm not bringing anything that's going to weigh us down. We're going to like just rocket to the moon kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a perfect way to sum up the episode, dude. I think we called director's cut there, man. That was awesome.
All right, I like it. Let's just say if you're listening to this, like the video, share the video, make sure you leave comments, and all the interaction that we can get is super helpful.
Yes.
You can email us. You can go to our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, and you can connect with us there. We're all over social media. Just type in Harpeth Wealth Partners or Brandan Chasteen. Putting out some great things for clients and great things for people that just want to be a part of the ecosystem but aren't clients. So it's a great way to stay connected. If you have thoughts, feelings, emotions, or anything like that, if you just want us to talk about something, send it to us, because we like to do any kind of video or podcast that is super, super relevant. So if you have an issue or problem, somebody else does too, and we want to talk about that.
Yep.
Am I forgetting anything, Bill?
No, we're good to go, dude.
Come back next week. Talk soon.
Adios.
We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandan at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.